Maria Santos had been cleaning office buildings for 15 years, but she had never worked in a place quite like Sterling Corporate Tower. The 40-story glass building stretched toward the clouds, filled with executives in expensive suits and assistants who clicked across marble floors in designer heels. Maria arrived every morning at 5 a.m. when the building was still quiet and peaceful before the rush of business began. She was a small woman with kind brown eyes and hands that had grown strong from years of hard work. Maria had come to America from El Salvador when she was 22, carrying nothing but hope and the determination to build a better life for herself. She had learned English slowly, working double shifts at various cleaning jobs while studying at night. But there was one thing about Maria that made her different from most people. She was completely deaf. Maria had been born without hearing, but this had never stopped her from living a full life. She communicated through sign language, reading lips, and writing notes when needed. In El Salvador, her family and community had always supported her, making sure she never felt left out. But in America, things were different. Most people didn't understand sign language, and many employers were hesitant to hire someone who couldn't hear. That's why Maria was grateful when Johnson Cleaning Services gave her a chance. The company owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, was also from Latin America and understood the challenges immigrants faced. She saw how hard Maria worked and how carefully she cleaned every surface. Maria's disability actually made her better at her job in some ways. She noticed details others missed because she observed everything with her eyes. At Sterling Corporate Tower, Maria worked on floors 35 through 40, the executive levels. These floors were always pristine, with expensive artwork on the walls and thick carpets that absorbed every sound. The executives who worked there rarely paid attention to the cleaning staff, which suited Maria fine. She preferred to work quietly and efficiently, taking pride in making everything spotless. Maria had developed her own system over the months she had worked at Sterling. She knew which offices needed extra attention, which conference rooms were used most often, and where people tended to leave their coffee cups. She memorized everyone's schedules, so she could clean around their meetings without disrupting anything important. The CEO's office was on the 40th floor, and it was the largest space Maria cleaned. Richard Sterling was the third generation of his family to run the company. She had seen him a few times from a distance, a tall man with gray hair who always looked serious. His office was filled with family photos, business awards, and expensive furniture. Maria always cleaned this office with extra care, knowing how important it was. One Tuesday morning in September, Maria was cleaning Mr. Sterling's conference room when something unusual happened. She was wiping down the long wooden table when she felt vibrations through the floor. Someone was walking toward the conference room, but it was only 6 a.m., too early for any executive to be in the office. Maria looked up to see Mr. Sterling himself walking into the room. He stopped when he saw her, clearly surprised. Most executives never encountered the cleaning staff because Maria and her colleagues worked so early in the morning. Mr. Sterling looked tired, like he had been working all night or had arrived very early for an important meeting. For a moment, they both stood there, not sure what to do. Maria felt nervous. She didn't want to get in trouble for being in the wrong place. She quickly gathered her cleaning supplies and started to leave, bowing her head politely as she had been taught. But then something happened that changed everything. Mr. Sterling held up his hand in a gesture that made Maria stop and look at him more carefully. He was moving his hands in a way that looked familiar. Maria watched closely and realized with shock that he was signing "Good morning" in American Sign Language. Maria's eyes widened with surprise. She had never expected to meet anyone in this corporate world who knew sign language. Cautiously, she signed back, "Good morning," and then added, "Sorry for disturbing you." Mr. Sterling smiled, the first time Maria had ever seen him smile. He signed back, "No problem at all. What's your name?" "Maria," she signed, still not quite believing this was happening. "It's nice to meet you, Maria. I'm Richard, he signed back. Maria knew who he was, of course, but she appreciated that he introduced himself as if they were equals. She had never experienced that kind of respect from an executive before. You sign very well, Maria told him, her hands moving gracefully through the familiar motions of her first language. My younger brother was born deaf, Richard explained through sign language. I learned ASL when I was a child so we could communicate. I don't get to practice much anymore. This revelation amazed Maria. In all her years of working in office buildings, she had never met someone in a position of power who understood her language. Most people either ignored her or spoke very slowly and loudly, as if being deaf meant she couldn't understand English. I've seen you working here, Richard continued signing. You do an excellent job. Everything is always perfect when you've cleaned. Maria felt a warm feeling spread through her chest. She took pride in her work, but rarely received recognition for it. Thank you, she signed. I try my best. How long have you been working at Sterling? Richard asked. 8 months, Maria replied. I work for Johnson Cleaning Services. Do you like working here? Maria considered the question carefully. Yes, I do. It's a beautiful building, and I enjoy making it clean and nice for everyone. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Have you always worked in cleaning? For 15 years since I came to America, Maria explained. In El Salvador, I helped my family with their small restaurant, but here it's harder to find work when you're deaf. What would you like to do if you could choose any job? Richard asked. This was a question no one had ever asked Maria before. She thought for a moment before answering. I love to organize things and help people. In El Salvador, I helped manage my family's restaurant, keeping track of supplies, organizing schedules, making sure everything ran smoothly. But here, most office jobs require answering phones or attending meetings where I can't understand what's happening. Richard listened carefully to everything Maria told him. You know, he signed, understanding and organizing are very important skills in business, much more important than hearing every word in a meeting. Their conversation was interrupted when the elevator doors opened and several other executives arrived for what was apparently an early morning meeting. Richard looked at his watch and seemed surprised at how much time had passed. I have to go now, he signed to Maria, but I'm very glad we had this conversation. Would you like to talk again sometime? Maria nodded, still hardly believing this was real. I would like that very much. Good. I'll see you soon, Richard signed before turning to greet the other executives who were entering the conference room. As Maria left the 40th floor, her mind was spinning with thoughts about what had just happened. In her 15 years of cleaning offices, she had never had a real conversation with anyone above the level of a building security guard. Most people barely acknowledged her existence, and she had grown used to being invisible. But Richard Sterling, the CEO of one of the city's most successful companies, had not only noticed her, but had taken the time to have a genuine conversation in her own language. He had asked about her life, her dreams, and her experiences in a way that showed real interest and respect. Maria spent the rest of her shift thinking about their conversation. She had been honest when she told Richard about her interest in organization and management. Back in El Salvador, she had been good at those things. Her family's restaurant had run more smoothly when she was involved, and customers often complimented the efficient service. But in America, Maria had accepted that cleaning was probably the best job she could hope for. Most employers saw her disability as a limitation, not understanding that being deaf had actually made her more observant and detail-oriented. She had learned to read people's body language and facial expressions better than most hearing people ever would. Over the next few days, Maria found herself looking forward to work in a new way. She wondered if she would see Richard again, or if their conversation had been just a one-time occurrence. She continued to clean his office with the same care as always, but now she knew something about the person who worked there. She noticed details she hadn't paid attention to before. Photos of Richard with a younger man who might be his deaf brother, books about business management on his shelves, and notes written in multiple languages. On Friday morning, Maria was organizing supplies in a storage closet on the 39th floor when she felt the familiar vibrations of footsteps approaching. She turned around to see Richard walking toward her with a smile. "Good morning, Maria," he signed. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she replied. "Please, just call me Richard," he signed. "I've been thinking about our conversation earlier this week." Maria set down the supplies she had been organizing and gave him her full attention. "I was impressed by what you told me about your experience managing your family's restaurant," Richard continued. "And I've been watching how efficiently you work here. You seem to understand this building and its operations better than many people who have worked here for years." Maria wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but she listened carefully. "I have an idea I'd like to discuss with you," Richard signed. "But it would require a longer conversation than we can have in the hallway. Would you be interested in meeting with me in my office sometime?" Maria's heart started beating faster. She had no idea what kind of idea he might have, but she was curious and excited by the possibility. "Yes, I would be very interested," she signed back. "Wonderful. How about Monday morning at 7 a.m., before the regular business day starts? That way we won't be interrupted." "That sounds perfect," Maria agreed. "Great. I'll see you Monday morning then," Richard said before walking toward the elevator. As Maria watched him leave, she realized her hands were shaking slightly with excitement and nervousness. In 3 days, she would be having a private meeting with the CEO of Sterling Corporation. She had no idea what he wanted to discuss, but she had a feeling it might be something that could change her life. That weekend, Maria couldn't stop thinking about Monday morning. She talked to her sister Carmen, who lived in the same apartment building, about what had happened. Carmen was amazed and excited for Maria, but also worried. "Just be careful, Maria," Carmen said, speaking slowly so Maria could read her lips while they sat at Carmen's kitchen table. "Rich people sometimes make promises they don't keep." "I know," Maria replied, both speaking and signing since Carmen understood some sign language. "But he seems different. He talked to me like I was a real person, not just someone who cleans his office." "What do you think he wants to talk about?" Carmen asked. "I have no idea," Maria admitted. "But I'm going to find out." Sunday night, Maria laid out her best clothes for Monday morning, a simple black dress and cardigan that she usually wore to church. She wanted to look professional and respectful for whatever this meeting might bring. As she got ready for bed, Maria thought about how much her life had changed in just 1 week. 7 days ago, she was invisible to everyone in Sterling Corporate Tower. Now she had a scheduled meeting with the CEO. Whatever happened on Monday morning, she knew that her life would never be quite the same again. Monday morning arrived with unusual sunshine for late September. Maria woke up at 4:30 a.m., an hour earlier than usual, her stomach filled with butterflies. She had barely slept, her mind running through dozens of possibilities about what Richard Sterling might want to discuss with her. As she got dressed in her carefully chosen outfit, she looked at herself in the small mirror hanging on her bedroom wall. "You can do this," she told her reflection, signing the words for confidence. "Whatever happens, you can handle it." Maria arrived at Sterling Corporate Tower at 6:45 a.m., giving herself extra time to calm her nerves. The security guard, Mr. Johnson, greeted her with his usual friendly wave. He had learned a few basic signs over the months Maria had worked there, which always made her smile. "Big day today?" he asked, speaking clearly so she could read his lips while also signing, "Good luck." Maria had told him about the meeting on Friday, and he had been excited for her. "Yes, very big day," she replied. Taking the elevator to the 40th floor felt different this time. Instead of going there to clean, Maria was going as an invited guest. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked toward Richard's office, the thick carpet muffling her footsteps. The door to Richard's office was open, and she could see him sitting at his desk, reading documents. When he noticed her approaching, he looked up with a warm smile and stood to greet her. "Good morning, Maria," he signed, gesturing toward two comfortable chairs arranged near the large windows that offered a stunning view of the city. "Thank you for coming early. Please, have a seat." Maria sat down carefully, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. She had never sat in such an expensive chair or had such an incredible view during a conversation. "Would you like some coffee or water?" Richard asked. "Water would be nice, thank you," Maria replied. Richard poured her a glass of water from a pitcher on a side table, then sat down across from her. For a moment, they both looked out at the city below, where early morning traffic was beginning to move through the streets. "Maria," Richard began, his hands moving thoughtfully as he signed, "I want to start by telling you something about my brother David, who I mentioned before." Maria nodded, giving him her full attention. "David is 5 years younger than me, and he's one of the smartest people I know," Richard continued. "When we were growing up, many people assumed he couldn't succeed in business because he was deaf, but David proved them all wrong. He's now a successful architect who designs buildings all over the country." "That's wonderful," Maria signed. "He must be very talented." "He is. But more than that, he taught me something important about ability and disability," Richard explained. "David sees things that hearing people miss. He notices details in building designs that others overlook. His disability became his strength because it made him more observant and careful." Maria felt a connection to this story. She had often felt that being deaf made her more aware of her surroundings, but she had never thought of it as a professional advantage. "I've been thinking about our conversation last week," Richard continued, "and about what you told me regarding your experience managing your family's restaurant. I've also been observing how you work here at Sterling." "Observing me?" Maria asked, feeling slightly nervous. "Not in a bad way," Richard quickly clarified. "I've noticed that you understand this building's operations better than most of our employees. You know when meetings are scheduled, which departments are busiest, when deliveries arrive. You see patterns and details that others miss." Maria relaxed a little, realizing that her careful attention to detail hadn't gone unnoticed. "Last week you mentioned that you would be interested in organization and management work if the opportunity existed," Richard said. "Well, I think I might have such an opportunity." Maria's heart began beating faster. "What kind of opportunity?" Richard leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming more serious. "Maria, Sterling Corporation is growing rapidly. We've acquired 3 new companies in the past year, and we're planning to expand our operations significantly. This growth brings challenges. We need to coordinate between different departments, manage multiple office locations, and ensure that everything runs efficiently." He paused for a moment, then continued. "We need someone who can see the big picture while managing small details. Someone who notices what others miss. Someone who can organize systems and help people work together more effectively." "That sounds like an important job," Maria said, though she wasn't quite sure where this conversation was heading. "It is important," Richard agreed, "and I think you might be the right person for it." Maria's eyes widened with surprise. "Me? But I'm just a cleaning lady. I don't have business experience or education." "Maria?" Richard signed patiently. "You told me you helped manage your family's restaurant. That's business experience. You've been observing Sterling Corporation's operations for 8 months. You understand how this building works better than many of our managers, and you have something that can't be taught: natural organizational instincts." Maria felt overwhelmed by what she was hearing. "I don't understand. What exactly are you offering me?" "I want to offer you a position as operations coordinator," Richard explained. "You would work with different departments to help them run more efficiently. You would help coordinate schedules, manage supplies, and solve operational problems. You would be my eyes and ears for making sure everything in this company runs smoothly. But how could I do that job? I can't hear phone calls or participate in spoken meetings, Maria protested, though part of her was excited by the possibility. We would accommodate those needs, Richard said firmly. Most communication these days happens through email anyway. For meetings, we can provide interpreters, or you can have written summaries. Many of the most important observations happen through watching and analyzing, not hearing. Maria sat quietly for a moment, processing this incredible offer. It seemed too good to be true. "Why me?" she finally asked. "You must know many people with more education and experience." Richard smiled thoughtfully. "Maria, in business we often get caught up in credentials and degrees. But the most valuable employees are those who are naturally good at what they do, who care about quality, and who can see solutions that others miss. You have all of those qualities." "What happened with your brother David taught me not to underestimate people because of disability," he continued. "And frankly, in my experience, people who have faced challenges often work harder and appreciate opportunities more than those who have had everything handed to them." Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. No one in her professional life had ever spoken to her with such respect and confidence. "Would I still work for the cleaning company?" she asked. "No, you would be a direct employee of Sterling Corporation, with a full salary and benefits," Richard explained. "The position would start at $45,000 per year, with opportunities for increases based on performance." Maria's hands flew to her mouth in shock. She currently made about $18,000 per year working for the cleaning service. This salary would completely change her life. "I know this is a lot to consider," Richard continued. "You don't have to give me an answer today. Take some time to think about it." "What would I need to do to prepare for such a job?" Maria asked, her practical nature taking over despite her excitement. "We would provide training," Richard said. "You would spend the first month working closely with different department managers, learning how each area of the company operates. We would also arrange for computer training if you need it, and help you develop any other skills necessary for the role." "And if I don't succeed? If I'm not good at it?" Maria asked, her insecurities surfacing. "Maria, I've built this company by being good at judging people's abilities," Richard said confidently. "I wouldn't offer you this position if I didn't believe you could excel at it. But to answer your question, we would work together to ensure your success. This isn't a test you can fail. It's an opportunity for you to grow." They talked for another hour, with Richard explaining more details about the job and answering Maria's questions. He showed her organizational charts of the company, explained different departments' functions, and described some of the challenges they were facing with their rapid growth. "One more thing I want you to consider," Richard said toward the end of their conversation. "This position would make you one of the few deaf executives in corporate America. You would be breaking barriers and showing other people with disabilities that these opportunities exist." "That's a lot of responsibility," Maria said, feeling both excited and nervous about the possibility. "Yes, it is," Richard agreed, "but it's also an opportunity to make a real difference, both for this company and for other people who might face similar challenges." As their meeting concluded, Richard handed Maria a folder containing more detailed information about the position. "Take this home and review it," he said. "Discuss it with your family. If you decide you're interested, we can arrange for you to meet with some of the other executives and see more of the company's operations." "When do you need an answer?" Maria asked. "Take as much time as you need," Richard replied, "but I hope you'll seriously consider it. I think this could be the beginning of something very significant for both you and Sterling Corporation." As Maria left Richard's office, her mind was spinning with possibilities and concerns. She walked through the building's familiar hallways, but everything looked different now. Instead of seeing herself as an invisible cleaning lady, she tried to imagine herself as an operations coordinator, working alongside executives and helping to run a major corporation. The rest of her cleaning shift passed in a blur. Maria went through the motions of her familiar routine, but her thoughts were entirely focused on Richard's offer. Every time she passed a conference room or office, she wondered what it would be like to work in those spaces as a professional rather than someone who cleaned them. At lunchtime, Maria sat in the building's plaza, reading through the detailed job description Richard had given her. The responsibilities seemed challenging but exciting: coordinating schedules, analyzing efficiency problems, managing supply chains, and helping different departments communicate better with each other. The salary information made her heart race. With that kind of money, she could move to a better apartment, maybe even help her sister Carmen start the small business she had always dreamed of opening. Maria had been sending money back to her family in El Salvador whenever possible, but this salary would allow her to help them much more significantly. But the most amazing part was the respect Richard had shown her. He had talked to her like an intelligent professional, asking for her opinions and treating her ideas as valuable. He had seen potential in her that she hadn't even seen in herself. That evening, Maria sat at Carmen's kitchen table, explaining everything that had happened. Carmen's eyes grew wider and wider as Maria described the meeting and the job offer. "Maria, this is incredible," Carmen said, her hands moving excitedly as she spoke and signed simultaneously. "This man is offering you a chance to completely change your life." "I know," Maria replied, "but I'm scared. What if I can't do it? What if I fail and embarrass myself? What if you succeed and become more successful than you ever dreamed?" Carmen countered. "Maria, you've been working hard your whole life, waiting for an opportunity like this. Maybe this is God's way of rewarding your patience and dedication." "But why would a powerful CEO want to help someone like me?" Maria asked. Carmen thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe because he sees something in you that you don't see in yourself. Maybe because his brother taught him that disability doesn't mean inability. Or maybe because good people sometimes do good things for other good people." That night, Maria lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She thought about her journey from El Salvador, all the years of hard work, all the times people had overlooked her or treated her as less capable because of her disability. She thought about her dreams and goals that she had almost given up on. Most of all, she thought about Richard Sterling and the incredible opportunity he was offering her. For the first time in years, Maria allowed herself to hope for something bigger than just getting by. She began to imagine a future where she could use her skills and intelligence in ways she had never thought possible. As dawn approached, Maria made her decision. She was going to take the biggest risk of her life and accept Richard Sterling's offer. Whatever happened next, she was ready to find out what she was truly capable of achieving. Tuesday morning found Maria standing outside Sterling Corporate Tower with a different purpose than she had ever had before. Instead of carrying cleaning supplies, she held a leather briefcase that Carmen had bought her as a congratulations gift. Instead of entering through the service entrance, she walked through the main lobby like any other professional heading to work. When Maria had called Richard on Monday afternoon to accept his offer, his excitement had been clear even through their text message conversation. He had immediately set up meetings for her with Human Resources and begun arranging her transition from the cleaning company to Sterling Corporation. The first person Maria met was Jennifer Walsh, the Human Resources Director. Jennifer was a woman in her 40s with short blonde hair and a warm smile. She had learned some basic sign language phrases in preparation for their meeting, which touched Maria deeply. "Welcome to Sterling Corporation." "Maria," Jennifer said, speaking clearly while also signing, "Welcome. Richard has told me so much about you, and we're all excited to have you join our team." "Thank you for this opportunity," Maria replied, both speaking and signing. "I'm nervous but very excited to start." "That's completely normal," Jennifer assured her. "Starting any new job is challenging, but we're going to make sure you have all the support you need to succeed." Jennifer explained Maria's benefits package, which included health insurance, dental care, and a retirement plan, things Maria had never had before in her working life. She also introduced Maria to Sarah Chen, a sign language interpreter who would be available for important meetings when needed. "We want you to feel comfortable communicating however works best for you," Jennifer explained. "Some meetings you might prefer to have interpreted, others you might want written summaries, and some you might handle perfectly well on your own by reading lips and body language." Richard had scheduled Maria's first official day to begin with a tour of the entire company, led by different department managers who would explain their operations. Her first stop was the financial department on the 32nd floor. Michael Rodriguez, the financial director, greeted Maria with professional warmth. He had prepared a written overview of his department's functions, which he handed to her as they walked through the floor. "We handle all of Sterling's financial operations," he explained, speaking clearly and making sure Maria could see his face. "Budgeting, payroll, accounting, financial analysis, and reporting. One of our biggest challenges lately has been coordinating financial information between our original company and the 3 new companies we've acquired." As Michael showed her around the department, Maria's observational skills immediately went to work. She noticed that different teams were using different software systems, that filing systems weren't standardized, and that there seemed to be a lot of back-and-forth communication that could probably be streamlined. "Do the new companies use the same accounting software as Sterling?" Maria asked. "No, they don't," Michael replied, looking impressed that she had identified that issue so quickly. "We're working on integrating everything, but it's been more complicated than we expected." "Would it help if someone mapped out all the different systems and created a plan for standardization?" Maria suggested. Michael's eyes lit up. "That would be incredibly helpful. We've been so busy with day-to-day operations that we haven't had time to step back and look at the big picture." This pattern repeated throughout Maria's tour. In the marketing department, she noticed that creative teams and data analysts seemed to work separately when they could probably collaborate more effectively. In operations, she observed that supply orders were being placed by multiple people without coordination, leading to overstock of some items and shortages of others. But more importantly, Maria noticed something else. The people working at Sterling Corporation were dedicated and skilled, but many of them seemed stressed and overwhelmed. The company's rapid growth had created challenges that no one had time to address systematically. By the end of her first week, Maria had filled 3 notebooks with observations and ideas. Richard scheduled a Friday afternoon meeting to check on her progress and hear her initial thoughts. "How has your first week been?" he asked as they sat in his office. "Overwhelming but exciting," Maria replied honestly. "Everyone has been very kind and patient with me. I'm learning so much every day." "What are your observations so far?" Richard asked. Maria opened her notebook and began sharing what she had noticed. She talked about the software integration challenges in financial, the communication gaps between marketing teams, the supply coordination issues in operations, and several other areas where she saw opportunities for improvement. "These are excellent insights," Richard said, clearly pleased. "You've identified problems that some of our managers have been struggling with for months. Do you have ideas for solutions?" "Some ideas, yes," Maria replied. "But I want to learn more about each department before I suggest specific changes. I don't want to propose solutions that might work in theory, but not in practice." "That's very wise," Richard said. "Take your time to really understand how things work before recommending changes." Over the next month, Maria threw herself into learning every aspect of Sterling Corporation's operations. She attended department meetings, studied workflow processes, and talked with employees at every level of the company. Her natural curiosity and attention to detail served her well in this role. Maria also discovered that her disability sometimes gave her advantages in business settings. Because she focused so intently on people's faces and body language, she became skilled at reading the unspoken dynamics in meetings. She could tell when someone was confused but afraid to ask questions, when team members disagreed with decisions but weren't speaking up, and when departments were experiencing internal conflicts. Her first major project came when Richard asked her to analyze the company's meeting efficiency. "We seem to be spending more and more time in meetings, but I'm not sure we're getting more productive," he explained. Maria spent 2 weeks observing different types of meetings throughout the company. She tracked how long meetings lasted, how many people attended, what was accomplished, and what follow-up actions were required. She noticed that many meetings included people who didn't need to be there, that discussions often repeated the same points without resolution, and that important decisions were sometimes delayed because key information wasn't available. When Maria presented her findings to Richard and the other executives, she had prepared a comprehensive report with specific recommendations for making meetings more efficient. She suggested standard agenda formats, guidelines for who should attend different types of meetings, and systems for ensuring that necessary information was gathered before discussions began. "If we implemented these changes, I estimate we could reduce meeting time by about 30% while improving decision-making quality," Maria concluded her presentation. The room was quiet for a moment before Richard began applauding, followed by the other executives. "This is exactly the kind of analysis we needed," Richard said. "How long did it take you to put this together?" "About 2 weeks of observation and 1 week of analysis," Maria replied. "Our consulting firm charged us $50,000 last year for a similar study and didn't provide recommendations nearly this detailed," commented Patricia Williams, the Vice President of Operations. Over the following months, Maria's role at Sterling Corporation continued to evolve and expand. She successfully led the implementation of her meeting efficiency recommendations, which did indeed reduce meeting time by about 30%. She developed standardized systems for supply ordering that eliminated waste and shortages. She created communication protocols that improved coordination between departments. But Maria's most significant contribution came when Sterling Corporation was preparing to acquire a fourth company, a small tech firm called Data Flow Solutions. The acquisition was important for Sterling's expansion into digital services, but the integration process was expected to be complicated and expensive. Richard asked Maria to lead the operational integration planning. "You understand how complex acquisitions can be from observing our previous ones," he explained. "I want you to develop a plan that will make this integration smoother and more efficient." This was Maria's biggest challenge yet. She would be working directly with Dataflow's management team, coordinating with Sterling's legal and financial departments, and creating systems for combining two very different company cultures. Maria approached the project with her characteristic thoroughness. She spent time at Dataflow's offices, learning their operations and meeting their employees. She analyzed their systems, procedures, and company culture. She also reviewed the problems that had occurred during Sterling's previous acquisitions and developed strategies for avoiding similar issues. The integration plan Maria created was comprehensive and detailed. She identified potential conflicts between the company's different systems and proposed solutions. She created timelines for combining operations while minimizing disruption to both companies' ongoing business. Most importantly, she developed communication strategies for helping Dataflow employees feel welcomed into Sterling Corporation rather than absorbed by it. When Maria presented her integration plan to both companies' leadership teams, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Dataflow's CEO, Mark Thompson, was particularly impressed. "I've been through 3 acquisitions in my career," he said after Maria's presentation, "and this is the most thoughtful and complete integration plan I've ever seen. You've anticipated issues that usually don't get addressed until they become problems." The Dataflow integration proceeded more smoothly than anyone had expected. Within 6 months, the two companies were operating as one unified organization, with minimal loss of productivity and no significant employee departures. The success of the integration saved Sterling Corporation an estimated $2 million in consulting fees and lost productivity compared to their previous acquisitions. As Maria's one-year anniversary at Sterling Corporation approached, Richard scheduled a performance review meeting. Maria had mixed feelings about the review. She was proud of what she had accomplished, but she still sometimes felt like she was proving herself in ways her hearing colleagues didn't have to. "Maria," Richard began their meeting, "I want to start by saying that hiring you was one of the best decisions I've made as CEO." "Thank you," Maria replied, feeling both pleased and relieved. "You've exceeded every expectation we had for this role," Richard continued. "Your work on meeting efficiency saved us time and money. Your supply chain improvements eliminated waste throughout the company, and your leadership of the data flow integration was simply outstanding." "I've had a lot of support from everyone here," Maria said modestly. "Yes, but support doesn't create the kind of innovative thinking and careful analysis you've shown," Richard replied. "You've proven that operational intelligence and attention to detail are more valuable than hearing every word in a meeting." Richard then surprised Maria with news she hadn't expected. "We're creating a new position, Director of Operational Excellence, and we want you to be our first person in this role. It comes with a salary increase to $65,000 and a team of 3 analysts who will report to you." Maria was speechless for a moment. In 1 year, she had gone from making $18,000 as a cleaning lady to being offered a director-level position with her own team. "The board of directors specifically requested that we create this role because they were so impressed with your work," Richard added. "They want to expand your operational analysis to all of Sterling's future acquisitions and major projects." "I don't know what to say," Maria finally managed. "This is beyond anything I ever imagined possible." "Say yes," Richard suggested with a smile. 6 months later, Maria stood in the same conference room where she had first met Richard Sterling, but everything about her situation had changed. She was now leading a presentation to the board of directors about Sterling Corporation's operational efficiency improvements over the past 18 months. The numbers were impressive. The company had reduced operational costs by 15% while improving productivity by 20%. Employee satisfaction surveys showed significant improvements in workplace communication and efficiency. Most importantly, Sterling's successful integration model was now being studied by other corporations as a best practice example. But for Maria, the most meaningful change was personal. She had discovered capabilities in herself that she never knew existed. She had learned that her careful observation skills, analytical thinking, and natural organizational abilities could make a real difference in the business world. Maria had also become an advocate for hiring people with disabilities in corporate America. She spoke at conferences, mentored other deaf professionals, and worked with universities to create internship programs for students with disabilities. Her success story had been featured in several business magazines, inspiring other companies to reconsider their assumptions about disability and capability. On her second anniversary at Sterling Corporation, Maria received an unexpected visitor. David Sterling, Richard's deaf brother, came to meet her. David was in town designing a new office building for a client, and Richard had arranged for them to have lunch together. "Richard has told me so much about your work here," David signed as they sat in the company cafeteria. "I'm amazed by everything you've accomplished." "Your brother gave me an opportunity I never thought possible," Maria replied. "I'll always be grateful for his faith in me." "Richard told me you've inspired changes throughout the company," David said. "But I think you've done something more important than that. You've shown that success in business comes from understanding, analyzing, and solving problems, not from fitting into traditional expectations." As they talked, Maria reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been invisible to almost everyone in Sterling Corporate Tower. Now, she was a respected executive whose work was improving the company's operations and inspiring other organizations to expand their definitions of talent and capability. The conversation with David reminded Maria of something important. Her success wasn't just personal achievement. Every barrier she had broken down made it easier for the next person with a disability to be seen as a valuable employee rather than a limitation to accommodate. That evening, as Maria prepared to leave work, she took the elevator to the 40th floor one more time. She walked past Richard's office and looked out the same windows where they had first discussed his incredible job offer. The view was the same, but everything else had changed completely. Maria thought about the young deaf woman she had been when she first arrived in America, full of hope but limited by other people's assumptions about what she could accomplish. She thought about all the years of cleaning offices while dreaming of something more, never imagining that the opportunity for something more would come from a chance encounter with someone who saw her potential rather than her limitations. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Maria smiled at her reflection in the polished metal doors. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but she now knew with confidence that she was capable of meeting them successfully. Her journey from cleaning lady to corporate director was complete, but her story of breaking barriers and changing assumptions about disability in the workplace was just beginning.